and welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula One. So the Australian Grand Prix has come to a close, and what could be said really for this race? It was a good one, it was decent, there was some good moments in there, some dramatic moments, and there was some okay overtaking at times as well, so it was certainly the most exciting race so far, with 3 rounds in. Amazing. But yeah, overall I think it was a good race. It was nice. Formula One needed this different race winner as well, of course. It was just a shame the circumstances how he won it, shall we say. But I'm not taking anything away from that. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out of a maximum of 10 points based on their overall race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes an offer for some drivers that do something extra special during a race, and on the very rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. Let's take a look at the current Crawl Room standings then going into this episode. It is on the screen now for you to take a look at. As you can see, Ollie Behrman is there with his 11 points, but unfortunately he will be tumbling out of this order as Carlos Sainz returns, of course. Although I think Carlos Sainz's return is certainly one that's raised a few eyebrows, isn't it? So yeah, obviously Ollie Behrman won't be on this table come the end of the round, but at the end of the season, obviously, his tallies will be there, and we'll see where he ends up, because I've got a funny feeling he'll still be ahead of some drivers that are doing the full campaign. And we'll have a quick look at the team wall as well, shall we? Have a look and see where your favourite team is on this series. These scores are awarded purely based on what the drivers have scored in their own respective race and added to create the team's total. I can influence the team total though. If I think the team are delivering really well but the drivers are under-delivering, I can add points to them. And of course, if I think that the team is under-delivering, I can take points off them as well. That will all come at the end after I've reviewed all 20 drivers' race performances. So let's kick things off with the race winner then, shall we? It's it's not Max Verstappen. It's Carlos Sainz, smooth operator. Smooth operator. And he had a smooth operation as well, didn't he? What a fantastic effort by Carlos Sainz. -1 appendix, and, 2 weeks ago, and here he is taking the race win after a convincing race as well. Let's not forget that. He did fantastically well to line up second place on the grid alongside Max Verstappen. Initially wasn't leading the race, of course. Max led the first lap, but Max had issues from the start. It then meant that Max had an issue where he ran wide. The brake was basically locked on the right rear of the car. So he had a wide moment, and Carlos Sainz was able to get past him at the first opportunity with the DRS, of course. And then from there, he didn't look back really, did he? He really didn't. He had some good margins to his teammate behind. He was just doing a fantastic job. And Carlos Sainz, after everything being thrown at him before the season even started in terms of, yeah, you've not done anything wrong, Carlos, but get out of here. You're leaving Ferrari. He's in the window. Job vacancy. I am after a job, please. Can someone accept me? Can someone have a chat? Can I have an interview? Can I go for a second interview? Can I do a bit of work experience? He was left with a lot of unanswered questions going into this season, and he's delivered the goods, hasn't he? Bahrain, a fantastic podium that could have been a little bit more had they not favoured Charles Leclerc right away, even though he had braking issues. Saudi, of course, missed it due to appendicitis, and here he is, lining up on the front row of the grid and taking a victory that was really, really worthy of a fantastic credited win as well. I honestly believe that if Max Verstappen had stayed in that race anyway, maybe Max would have won it, but I think Carlos Sainz would have been throwing up a few surprises there and been a real annoyance to Red Bull during the pit stop phases, and I think he'd have been staying in within DRS and having a look. The pace that Carlos Sainz had, I think, was a worthy race-winning performance, even if Red Bull was still in that race with Max Verstappen. I honestly believe that. He was that good. He was that good this weekend. Contrast to just a couple of years ago, or was it even last year, when he was spinning off after a poor qualifying and then in the race binned it, and was out. He's a totally different man. He's a changed character now, is Carlos. And I think this fact that he's been binned off by Ferrari, he's going, look, I'm going to take the wins, I'm going to take the victory, I'm going to prove you chose to get rid of the wrong guy. And yeah, Carlos Sainz, what a stunning job this weekend, really is. 25 points on the board. I think had he not had the issues, of course, with his appendicitis at Saudi, I think it could have been another podium there for him. We could see him at the top of the standings now if it wasn't for that. So a little bit of frustration there for Carlos. He'd have certainly been on top of the Crawl Room standings as well, let me tell you that at that point. But yeah, for Carlos Sainz, it's going to be a 12 points. I'm giving him 2 bonus points for that because that was impeccable. It was so, so good and so great to see. And not only is it a feel-good story from where he was just a couple of weeks ago, but he just had the pace to be able to deliver that win anyway. It was just amazing. So yeah, Carlos Sainz, a stunning drive, a stunning effort. Something well worth getting up for 4 o'clock in the morning for, let me tell you, here in the UK. That was a great drive. Well done, Carlos. Bravo. Fantastic. I can't praise him highly enough. It's 12. On the Cruel Room, to Carlos Sainz. And in second place, we come to Sha-la-la. Oh, sacre bleu, sha-la-la. Sacre bleu, Ferrari. A 1-2, and Leclerc picking up fastest lap as well means it's a full house for Ferrari. The maximum points that can be gained from a weekend they have secured. Would they have been looking into Australia thinking this could be possible? I don't think so, but I think maybe with the pace that we saw from practice and qualifying onwards, that they maybe have been thinking, hang on a minute, we could have Max winning, but we'll take the 2 spots on the podium of 2nd and 3rd this time around. But this is how it lies, isn't it? This is how it falls. Formula 1 is a cruel mistress at times, and this time it played into the hands of Ferrari. A fantastic 1-2 finish. Charles Leclerc, though, admittedly, it was okay, wasn't it? But he ruined his final qualifying lap time. So only lined up P5, elevated to P4 with Perez's penalty, of course, of 3 places for impeding. In the race itself, he was okay. It was good. He was decent. I don't want to take anything away from Charles, but when you look at him compared to Carlos, where Carlos was just off in the distance and gone, there were times where it was looking like Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris, it's certain opportunities with that Ferrari, looked like they could have the upper hand on him and maybe get past him and squeeze through. And it wasn't looking comfortable all the time, was he? It was just as it was, the McLarens ended up fading away at the end there. Oscar Piastri, of course, faded away in the mid-stages of the race. But then towards the latter end, there was Lando Norris coming back at him again as well. So I don't think it was a massively comfortable P2 finish for him here. It's difficult to judge how this performance goes for Charles, to be honest, because, yeah, he's done a fantastic job. It's a 1-2, as mentioned, fastest lap points as well. So you can't fault him for that at all. But when you look at what Sainz has done, you know, there's quite a big difference there, I think, in personally, of how each driver's race went. So for Charles Leclerc this weekend overall, I'm giving him a fair 8. It's a solid 8 for Charles. And I don't want to discredit him too much, but at the same time, I've given Carlos Sainz 12. I do think there is 4 points between those two, based on how their weekends have gone. I really do. Because, you know, as mentioned, Charles was under pressure at times from the McLarens. He had that difficult qualifying run at the end there. Benefited, of course, from Perez's penalty. Had it not been for that, I don't think we'd have seen him get ahead of Perez, whereas I still think Sainz would have beaten Perez as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to play for there, and I don't want to discredit Leclerc too much, but at the end of the day, Sainz just pissed all over him, really. But still, a fantastic 1-2 effort for Ferrari. And 8 points on the board to Sha-la-la. Finishing in 3rd place, we come to Lando Norris in the McLaren, securing his first podium of the 2024 campaign. Many more to come, I feel, as well as the season progresses. He now currently beats Nick Heifeld's record for most podiums without a victory within Formula 1, snatching it away with 14 podiums and no wins. But of course, if Norris gets a win, then that goes back to Heifeld, because Heifeld obviously never won and never will now. So, yeah, it's an unusual stat to have at the moment, because if he does win at any point, then that's fine. You know, it mitigates itself again. So, yeah, at the moment, though, he's taken a record for that, but I'm sure he won't mind. I think a win will come at some point this season. The McLaren seems a lot better car than it was at this point 12 months ago. If an update comes like it did last year, I think they could be on the pace of the Red Bulls easily. So, yeah, you know, as mentioned, Norris had the opportunity there, I think, to potentially beat Leclerc. They elected to pit Piastri first during the first set of stops, and that's what then puts Norris behind, of course, Piastri and Leclerc, who he was ahead of previously. So there's a little bit there that I think, you know, there was that area where he got just outside DRS, weren't it? About 1.6, 1.7 seconds behind Leclerc before Norris's tyres started to fade away again. But obviously, had they not had that issue or had that decision, team decision, the strategy decision, of course, to pit Piastri first, which was to defend against Russell at the time, actually. So it's understandable in places. But you look back at it and how the race unfolded, I think that was a bad move by McLaren there. I think we could have had a potential P2 here for Norris, especially as mentioned that Leclerc did come under pressure. So, but again, can't take anything away from Norris for that. It was a solid qualifying. a great finishing position, a podium position for him, and a great weekend overall for McLaren, a great weekend for Norris. So for that reason, it's going to be 9 points on the board to him for that. Well done, Lando Norris. That was a super job. Top drive, and yeah, fairly faultless. Finishing in 4th place, just 1 position away from securing his home podium and a maiden podium for any Australian driver in his home country. It is, of course, Oscar Piastri. Great race by him overall, to be honest with you. A solid qualifying effort as well. They were looking good, weren't they, the McLarens? It must be said. They really were looking strong. As mentioned, of course, Oscar Piastri had the first stop in the first round of stops, which meant that he leapfrogged his teammate and was able to battle quite fairly at that point. You know, was quite happy sat in 3rd there. But then during that mid-phase of the race, he chewed his tyres up a little bit much, which is what we saw in his first rookie season as well. You know, going a little bit hard on the tyres too soon, so they didn't quite have the longevity towards the end. But can't take anything away from Oscar for that. You know, overall, he's done a stunning job and secured a nice P4. When, of course, the team order came that, yeah, let Norris through, he let him through, no issues at all. Much to the size of the Australian crowd, of course. But it was understandable. Norris could have gone for Leclerc, and he did try. Even if they were going to try and reverse positions at the end there, it wasn't going to be worth it. I think Norris was like 11 seconds up the road at that point from Piastri as well, so he'd have had to slow down an insane amount. So I think everything that McLaren have done this weekend has been fair. The first round of pit stops, of course, gave Piastri that position unfairly in some respects, it must be said. But of course, at the time, they were covering other cars. So not too harsh on them, but I think it was a mistake. We could have seen a P2 and a P4 there, as opposed to P3, P4. But nonetheless, a great points all for McLaren. A great job by Oscar Piastri. 8 points on the board to him as well. High praise at the moment as we go through this order. But we're going to get to the latter half of the rejects soon, I'm sure. We're going to have a bit of a roasting. But for now, yeah, stay tuned, because that's coming. But for now, it's 8 points to Oscar Piastri. Fantastic home Grand Prix for him. He scored his first points here last year, and he scored one of his best results. His best result, of course, in Australia as well, with P4. 1 position away from a podium. I'm sure he'll be looking to change that next season when he comes and secure that podium. But for now, 8 points to Piastri. Solid drive. Finishing in P5, it is Checo Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. Yeah, do you know what? In some respects, I actually do feel a little bit sorry for Perez this time around, because I honestly thought that 3-place grid drop for impeding Nico Hülkenberg was harsh. That's coming from a Hülkenberg fan and a Haas fan as well. Yes, I'm a Haas fan. God, can you believe it? But yeah, honestly, I didn't really see much of it. I mean, we saw far worse last year. I mean, the biggest one, of course, that we saw last year was Max Verstappen at Singapore, where he completely wiped out and blocked Tsunoda's lap in that qualifying effort, where it saw Tsunoda being knocked out, where he could have got into Q3. You know, there was a big disparity there, and what did he get? A reprimand. This time around, it was the second to last corner. Yeah, you know, it was in the way, so to speak, but it wasn't a lap that would have ever seen Hülkenberg into Q2 anyway. They didn't seem to have that 1-lap pace this time around, did the Haas. So, yeah, I think it was overly harsh 3 places for that, because it wasn't a clear block in my eyes. It was more of a slight impede. It wasn't a blocking. It didn't totally ruin Hülkenberg's lap. Probably cost him a couple of tenths, but in the grand scheme of things, it weren't the strongest lap anyway. So, yeah, I do feel that Perez was a little bit hard done by here. So, starting P3 is where he should have been. Dropped, of course, to P6. At the start of the race, he was still P6, but then lost out to Stroll, got him, didn't he? And even Russell got him as well. So, didn't have the best of starts and slipped back. Then it was just a little bit too early for pitting. He pitted, and then the virtual safety car came out, which benefited Alonso. So, had he stayed out a lot longer, we could have seen him further up already. But as it was, he had to then come from 10th, work his way through the cars that didn't pit first off. And it was just got a little bit messy for him. So, yeah, you know, I would have expected more from Perez. Even starting P6, I would have expected a podium from him, especially when we saw the pace of those Ferraris. I think that would have been a tall order to beat him. But as it was, I mean, Leclerc and Sainz were coming out the pits already ahead of Perez before he'd done his second stop. So, bit of too much of a deficit for me there. So that being said, I'm going to award Sergio Perez 4 points this weekend. I don't think it's of the week worthy. And yeah, it needs knocking down, because of course I think that Red Bull should be on the podium regardless of where it starts a race. But we know what Australia's like. It's difficult for overtaking at times as well. And Christian Horner did say that when he overtook Alonso, he did actually get a bit of floor damage from that, running wide. So don't know to what extent. That could just maybe be a few excuses being thrown that way just to say that, look, you know, Checo quite a bad race, but we'll just say floor damage. You know, it's an easy one to say these days, isn't it? When your driver's underperforming, we'll just throw floor damage in there and it quietens people down. So, yeah, I don't want to be overly critical of Perez because I do think that 3-place grid penalty did impact his race more than we really should have expected it to. But yeah, 4 points I think is fair for Checo. Finishing in P6 after crossing the line in 7th place, it is Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Wow, oh wow, oh wow, Mr. Consistency. Well, so apart from Saudi, of course, obviously. Silly me, Mr. Consistency, Mr. Chuffing Stroll. He does what he wants when he wants, and he decided this weekend, I'm going to have a decent race. Well, fair enough, fair enough. You can have a decent race if you want, Lance. I'll let you have that. Q3 appearance, but nothing special, nothing spectacular. Should have really been ahead of Yuki, to be honest with you, but wasn't. And then in the race itself, was running around inside the top 10 like an Aston Martin's expected to do. Finished behind his teammate, but of course his teammate's penalty means he finishes ahead of him. And that's that, really. Can't say much more than that. But a P6 effort, good points all there. You know, 8 points picked up. Didn't put a wheel wrong in the race, really. You know, we've seen a few offs here and there in free practice, but a lot were going off in the first, especially Friday practice 1 and 2. Hell of a lot of cars going wide and running off, etc. So, yeah, not great, was it? But, yeah, you know, Lance not really done anything wrong, but nothing special again. So it's a solid 7 for Lance for me this weekend. I think he's done okay, but nothing spectacular. And that's where we're going to have it. I mean, looking at where the rejects are this year, Lance isn't really looking like one of those at the moment. Yeah, we had Saudi. I know we did. But, you know, judging over the first 3 races, he's had 1 bad race. There's other drivers that have had 3 bad races, you know. So he's not as bad as I was expecting him to be, and he's really just delivering the points that the Aston Martin is capable of getting. A solid 7 to Lance. Finishing in 7th place after crossing the line in 8th, it is Yuki Tsunoda in the Visa Cash-App Maxi Tampon Kick Me Up the Arse RB Red Bull Toro Rosso AlphaTauri once was Minardi. There you go, we've got there in the end. Yeah, you know, Tsunoda, stunning weekend once again. P8 in qualifying, fantastic effort, and was running around in that race. P9 throughout most of it. Then of course the accident that happened at the end there for George Russell elevated him to P8, back to his qualifying position, and then the penalty for Fernando Alonso elevates him 1 place further to secure himself 7th place, and that is a phenomenal effort. Being inside the points in that RB is a fantastic effort. Being inside the Q3 appearance, once again, fantastic effort. He has done a stunning job, Yuki. He really, really has. He is delivering. He's pissing all over Red Bull's Daniel Ricciardo, of course, and they don't like it, and I think that's quite clear to see. Yuki Tsunoda is in this really difficult position, and I honestly feel sorry for him because he has done nothing but deliver the results expected of him at the start of this season. He was out driving Ricciardo at the end of last season as well, of course, let's not forget that. He's out driving him here, but I just think for some reason they don't want him in that Red Bull. They want Ricciardo. So the fact that it's just not going to plan at all at the minute leaves them totally wide open. I think they honestly want to get rid of Perez and put Ricciardo in, but we've seen nothing of him at the moment to see that we should get rid of Perez and we need to put Ricciardo in. And I just think Tsunoda's just sat there just thinking, well, when's my turn going to come? I'm proving myself. I'm over-delivering. I'm doing such a good job, but I don't seem to be getting a look in, which is a big shame. So yes, Tsunoda though, for this round and this race only, it's a solid, perfect 10. He is getting a perfect 10 from me. You cannot fault a thing there. He did everything right, drove inside the points the entire race, and did a thoroughly good job for RB. They should be thankful to have him, but I think he's going underappreciated there at the moment. But their golden shower in Daniel Ricciardo is not delivering the goods, and they've got to change allegiance at some point because it could cost them points in the future if they're going to favour Red Bull, you know, Ricciardo's strategy. It could all get a bit messy. But for now, a perfect 10 to Tsunoda, delivering the goods once again. And crossing the line in 8th place after finishing the race in 6th, it is, of course, Fernando Alonso. What a shit penalty that was. That's all I'm going to say to that. Yeah, crossed the line 6th place. He had a last lap battle, and well, a battle for several laps really, with George Russell towards the end of that race. Russell was trying to find several ways around him, but just couldn't manage it. And then when we got onto the last lap of the race, just as we were entering Sector 2, and the corner where Alex Albon had his big shunt in free practice, we got to that corner and Alonso lifted off the throttle slightly earlier. That was, of course, to block Russell's attempt to obviously follow him through, get the DRS and do a last lap overtake, or second to last lap they were on at the time. And, yeah, so he just lifted off the throttle, went round the corner a little bit differently than what he does several laps previously, or what he has been doing for the several laps. And that meant that George Russell couldn't handle it and he bottled it behind him. Stuffed it into the wall, rolled the car nearly, two wheels. I mean, we have four wheels on one corner, so that was quite interesting to look at. He was well on his side, wasn't he? He was capsized. If it was a boat, it would be declared capsized. So, yeah, there was no contact between the two drivers. There was approximately half a second to 7/10 of a second gap between the two of them. And obviously the closing speed of both cars was slightly different, to different laps, you know. And, yeah, they decided that they were going to put it under investigation and then awarded Alonso a 20-second time penalty. It did look like Aston Martin were going to appeal it, but then they've decided that they're just going to take it on the chin and move on. So, yeah, a very, very harsh one for Alonso to end up losing out on big points. I mean, it's 4 points he lost there in total. It's a shame. It really is a shame because I don't think Alonso did anything wrong in that situation. If you're the car in front, you get to position your car as you like. I mean, we see it several times during races where drivers aren't going full speed at all times. You know, it's all about tyre management, your battery usage and when you deploy it. I mean, the red light flashes on the back of the car to show people that are harvesting power, so that means they're going to decelerate a lot more rapidly than what they do. But at the end of the day, you're at the pinnacle of the sport, and sometimes you have to drive the car differently to defend. It's all about defending your position. And there's many different ways you can do that. Just be it taking a different line going into the corner, going defensive, going offensive, trying different lines, braking a bit earlier, accelerating out the corner a little bit later to try and stop them from getting the momentum out of the corner. It is racing. It's all part of racing. And Alonso did nothing wrong at all, but we've got Johnny Herbert as a driver steward now, which, you know, in fairness, probably wasn't that good of a racer either. He seems to be even worse as a driver steward, it seems. It really does. I don't understand where this 20-second time penalty has come from at all. That is utter horseshit. Utter horseshit. Racing is racing. And Alonso made no contact with him, didn't put Russell in that position at all. He just literally closed up on him more than he was expecting to. Obviously lost front aero on the front wing and lost control and crashed substantially. The end result, so what happened to Russell, is not Alonso's fault. It's down to Russell to not crash. It's as simple as that. Best drivers in the world, apparently. You'd have thought they'd have been used to seeing that by now. You know, different defensive opportunities, not just taking a different line, but also slowing down earlier to stop your acceleration run out of a corner. It's a common thing. Happens in every walk of motorsport, club racing, anything. So, absolute horseshit penalty. So yeah, Alonso does finish P8, of course, but I am not marking him down for that result at all. I'm marking him on P6. And for that reason, I'm going to award him 7.5 for Alonso's race weekend overall. Qualifying wasn't the best, out-qualified by his teammate, unfortunately. Had the error, didn't he? Had the off in the Q3 session, which of course probably damaged the floor, I would say, at that point. We're mentioning floors again. But they are so crucial at the moment, aren't they, in Formula 1 with this, you know, what do they call it? I can't remember what they bloody call it at the minute. The sucking down. What do they call it? The aero. My mind's gone totally blank. It's fucking boiling in here. But yeah, you know, ground effects. There we go. I knew I'd get it. Ground effects. I'm not thick. Well, not as thick as I look anyway. But yeah, you know, the ground effects era, of course, these floors are so crucial. So yeah, I'm sure there was a couple of bits that fell off that car that shouldn't have done. And lined up P10. Again, should have out-qualified Tsunoda in that situation. In the race itself, they went for the long strategy. And when the virtual safety car came out, then that was advantage to Alonso because he got a cheap pit stop there. Not a free one, got a cheap pit stop and came out a lot higher up than when he should have done, really. He got out higher than he would have done. He'd have been behind Perez, so it would have been around P10. But as it was, came out in that P6 area. Stayed there for the rest of the race. That's how it played out for him. And then an unfair penalty then drops him to P8, and it doesn't look like Aston Martin are going to appeal it. So there we go. Shame for Alonso, but I'm awarding him 7.5 nonetheless for that. Solid effort. Nothing overly special or spectacular, but just where we expect the Aston Martins to be at the moment. Next up, in 9th place, it is Nico Hülkenberg. Ho ho ho! Feisty one you are. What a fantastic effort by Nico Hülkenberg, securing 2 points to Haas and adding to their tally quite nicely, it must be said. Fantastic effort by him. What a great drive once again. Was running around in that 10th place for quite a number of laps. And then, of course, the last lap incident with Russell elevated him to P9. A great effort by Hulkenberg. It must be said the qualifying wasn't the best, of course, qualifying himself outside and knocked out in Q1. But both drivers seem to have that issue, didn't they, in qualifying? Both Haas drivers were on the verge of that elimination. So, over a single lap, it seems that Haas have lost a little bit of summer. Last year, we'd have seen them in Q3 all the time, but then they tumbled down the order. I would sooner see it where they're a little bit further down, but they're able to gain places and go up. Great drive, great strategy by Haas, fantastic. They've done nothing wrong, have they? They really haven't. We were close to points in Bahrain, we got a point in Saudi, and now we've picked up some more points to the tally for Nico Hulkenberg. And not just that, but his teammate as well, who we'll come to shortly. Nick Hulkenberg, absolutely fantastic effort. It's a solid 9 points to me. I will just be knocking a point off for that qualifying. His teammate did squeeze through that courtesy of a lap time deletion, didn't it, into Q2. But that's the only thing I can fault with Hulkenberg. Gained a good number of places there to secure the points. Drove well, drove cleverly, did some good moves. The Albon move in particular was a nice move and a very crucial move as well at that. Looked to be closing in on Tsunoda at one stage, but unfortunately the tyres were giving up towards the end there, sadly, for Hulkenberg. But nonetheless, a good effort. Yeah, unfortunately for Haas, this penalty with Alonso, of course, affects them with their battle with RB. They would have been tied on 4 points apiece, with the 8th place for Tsunoda and the subsequent 3 that the Haas scored this time around, plus the point last time, of course. So it would have been that RB would have been 6th on the road because of the better standing, the better finishing position overall. But at the moment, the 2 points ahead now. So these penalties that are bullshit don't just affect the team that you penalise, but it also affects other teams and championship battles around you as well. So this is why everything has to be taken into consideration. I think the penalty with Alonso was overly harsh. Of course, it's not Tsunoda's fault or RB's fault at all. No, it isn't. And they're going to be reaping the rewards from that. And fair play to them for it. They put the car in that position to benefit. But when you look at it from a bigger picture, it does look a little bit unfair, doesn't it? But nonetheless, let's not take anything away from Haas's weekend this weekend. From what we expected them to be absolute jokes of the season, have gone to other teams. You know, their shitness has spread to other teams, and I cannot fault Haas for what they've done so far this year. A stunning 9 points, Nico Hulkenberg. Top job. And as mentioned, of course, in 10th place it is Kevin Magnussen. A better qualifying by him, only just a little bit better than his teammate, of course. 14th on the road, started in 14th, and again made some good ground, made some good progress. Played the team game once again because Hulkenberg went on a slightly different strategy. He was on the mediums while Magnussen was on the hards, so he allowed him through, and it looked like he was once again going to sacrifice a point for the good of the team. Fair play to Kevin Magnussen. He knows where he belongs. He knows that this is a team game, and they have to split the strategies, but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, when you're in a Haas, you're fighting for every point you can get. There's drivers out inside that top 10 that have fallen out. You need to make sure that your cars are benefiting from it, and that's what they've done. Picking up 3 points, both cars, inside the top 10 is a great effort. The first double points finish since God knows when for Haas as well, to be honest. Maybe 2022? Maybe if Mick scored a point and so did K-Mag? Maybe? I don't know. But either way, it certainly wasn't last year, was it? But yeah, overall, a fantastic effort for Haas, and Kevin Magnussen is getting 9 points on the board as well for him. Great effort by both drivers and deserving these results. Finishing just outside the points in P11, we do, of course, come to Alex Albon in the Williams.
David Brabham. Despite the name, I was much better in touring cars than F1.
And there we have it, a David Brabham of the week to Alex Albon. What a shame for Alex. It must be said, in my own personal opinion, the FP1 shunt that happened was enough for him to be David Brabham worthy, as it was, to be honest with you. I think that the crash that happened, it was such a big accident at such an early point in the weekend. It wasn't like he was pushing for a Q3 effort or pushing for a top 5 in qualifying. You know, it was a really, really big shunt. So early on in the weekend, and really set the team back. Of course, then everything happened where he was elected to take the drive and race over from Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent, of course, sitting out for the remainder of the weekend, sacrificing his race. Yeah, it was all a bit of a shame, to be honest, but that was out of Alex's hands, to be honest with you, in that situation. Yeah, he crashed the car, but he didn't make the decision to take the car away from Logan. So that's a shame from Logan's point of view, but Alex wasn't to blame for that. But he was to blame for the incident that happened that caused this whole pendulum effect to take place. Alex this weekend, I do feel, had the opportunities there to pick up at least 1 point, particularly with the crash at the end there, the penalty for Alonso. I know the Hassers, of course, got Alex, but I think Hulkenberg would have got him anyway. I think Alex maybe should have been able to stay ahead of Kevin Magnussen and would have picked up that 1 point, which would have been absolutely crucial to their standings. But as it is, it's yet another P11, which is just so frustrating. And, you know, I love Alex as a guy. He's had his birthday this weekend as well, of course. But yeah, that FP1 shunt was just far too much for me. Qualifying was okay, but again, nothing spectacular. You're seeing Tsunoda nipping into Q3 and you just think, come on Alex, you can get there, you can get up there, and it just isn't quite happening at the moment for one reason and another. We know there's a lot of changes going on behind the scenes at Williams as well. But yeah, unfortunately, Alex Albon, it was all done and dusted for me after free practice one, I'm afraid. It did cost his teammate a drive this weekend as well, but again, not blaming Alex for that, but that is basically the result of his accident. And yeah, for me personally, it had to be a David Brabham of the week to Alex Albon. Still love him, but it wasn't a good race overall. And securing P12, of course, after a mighty, mighty effort with many, many overtakes, a great, encouraging, fighting drive. You're doing ever so well. Oh, it's just a matter of time before he gets points. It is, it really is such a talent, such an unbelievable talent. This is, of course, Daniel Ricciardo.
Did you know back in the 90s there was a thing called pre-qualifying? I found that out the hard way when I didn't start after races.
And there we have it, yet another Brabham of the week, and it is awarded to Daniel Ricciardo for being absolutely dogshit this weekend once again. P nowhere, P18 in qualifying after getting his lap time deleted, which would have still seen him a couple of tenths off his teammate anyway, but through into Q2. But, you know, track limits are track limits. We're well aware of this now. It's been happening for several seasons. And, you know, if you cross the white line, your lap's getting deleted, and he was nowhere near it. He wasn't even close to it, and it was a little bit harsh. It was well over it. And the lap time, even though he still extended the track, was still not on par with his teammate. Qualified all the way down in P18. Overtook absolutely no one. I don't know where RB are coming from with this fucking press bullshit. But you had 3 cars that DNF that were ahead of him. You've got 2 really slow Alpines. You've got 2 Saubers that are taking 30 seconds plus to change the tyres at the moment because they're having issues with cross-threading wheel nuts. Still, it gained no places on merit. It gained no places on merit. The cars he's finished ahead of had issues, or broke down, or crashed. It's not hard, is it? It really isn't hard. So yeah, I'm afraid it is a Brabham of the week to Daniel Ricciardo for once again showing nothing at all this weekend. Out in Q1 while his teammates up there in Q3. And his teammates up there securing 6 crucial points for his team, while Daniel Ricciardo is P12, and only really luckily P12 because other teams are shitter. That's literally it. That is literally it. Had Sauber not had their issues with the pit stops, it'd have probably finished behind Bottas, because Bottas was ahead of him at the start of the race before the first round of pit stops came in. The Alpines, Gasly was looking better than him. Ocon was looking better than him as well before he got his brake duct caught up with a bag and he had to make an extra pit stop. It's fucking bollocks. He shouldn't even be near these cars. These are the rejects of the grid at the moment. Shouldn't be anywhere near him, but he is, and he's behind him at times, and it's only luck that got him ahead of him. Absolute horseshit. So yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, his 2nd consecutive of the week. He's really getting on my nerves. Finishing in and looking for some P13, it is Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Out in Q1 once again for Gasly, and got a reprimand for going over the white line on pit exit during the qualifying session, and then decided to do it again in the race and picked himself a 5-second time penalty up as well. So that was unfortunate, but here he is, P13 anyway. It doesn't really matter, does it? But, you know, there you go. That's it. It's a middle of row 5 to Gasly. There's not much I can say with these Alpines. I really don't know what I'm going to do with them, to be honest with you. Because they're not as bad as some cars or drivers, but again, there's still nothing special or outstanding, you know. If I'm only scoring Aston Martin 7, then I can't really be giving Alpines any more than that. But overall, I would just say it was a middle-of-the-road race for Gasly anyway. Picking up a silly 5-second time penalty for crossing a white line when you're not really fighting for anything, it's a shame, isn't it? You know, it's unnecessary. But yeah, overall for Gasly's weekend, middle-of-the-road 5 to him. I hope some updates come soon for Alpine, I really do, because it pains me to see them at the back of the grid, but at the same time, they've brought it on all the cells by chopping and changing the staff every 5 minutes. 5 to Gasly. Next up, we come to Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber. Kick me up the arse, steak rich energy bullshit team. Thanks for the heritage. I'm so glad we didn't sign Andretti into the sport. For Valtteri Bottas this weekend, he's certainly not going to be getting a of the week. He's certainly not going to make it a hat-trick. I don't think he did anything too bad this time around, you know. I really do feel a little bit sorry for him this race, because in that first stint, he had good pace. His qualifying was okay, got himself into Q2, that's fine. Good effort on that front, it must be said. I don't think there's much more in that car. I certainly don't think it's a Q3 appearance car. And in the race itself, that first round before the first pit stop and before he had a 30-odd second stop again, it was going alright, it was going okay. Nothing special, but again, it was okay for where I think that car is. And we've not seen that from Valtteri. We've seen Valtteri at the back of the grid all season long so far. So the fact he got into Q2, good effort. The fact he was up there until the first round of pit stops happened, good effort. And then when he got a decent-ish sort of pit stop, he picked up a 5-second time penalty because the wheel nut that they had as a spare fucked off down the pit lane, and that gets him a penalty. So, yeah, really one of those race weekends, once again, where you think, why bother turning up? But for Bottas this weekend, did nothing wrong. It's a solid 6 to him for that. He did what he could with what he was given this weekend. He really did. He did the best he could in qualifying, he did the best he could in the race, but when you're having long pit stops and getting penalties for pit stop errors that aren't his fault, he can't help it, can he? So yeah, 6 points to Bottas, and I'm loving the Uber share advert as well. The Uber car share advert was absolutely phenomenal. If you've not seen that, really do check it out, because Bottas is embracing his inner Aussie there. And it's very, very good. I highly recommend you check it out. But yeah, that's not awarding him points this weekend. His races, and he did okay, actually. He really did. So yeah, 6-2 Bottas. Finishing behind his teammate, it is, of course, Zhou Guan Yu in the other Alfa Romeo Kick Me Up the Arse Sauber squad. Zhou, he just misses out once again. He's lucky by the skin of his teeth. He's missing out on getting an of the week. The qualifying effort was nothing good at all. Damaged his front wing going wide at turn 12 and ripping the front wing off, or half of it off anyway. So was knocked out in Q1. In the race itself, trundling round at the back, and I say that lightly because obviously I know the car's not that great anyway. But then again, pit stops, 50-second pit stop again. Yeah, he's not done great, but at the same time, what can you do? You know, so he's getting a solitary 1 again, is Zhou. 1 point in for that. I think his teammate was a lot better than him this weekend. Both drivers weren't shit, but at the same time, Zhou Guanyu, yeah, not great. He's still not done really well, but he just misses out on an of the week because of the people that I have given him to at the moment, and some more to come as well, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, just a solitary 1 to Zhou. Wasn't a fantastic weekend anyway, but I do feel sorry for these shit slow pit stops, because it just ruins the whole race for him, even if they're having a somewhat good one. Zhou wasn't though, but a little bit of sympathy from me. 1 to Zhou. And then last of the runners, we come to Esti Bestie Ocon. Esti Bestie to you, ain't like Esti Bestie Ocon. What can be said for Ocon this time around? He got into Q2. He was actually celebrating over the radio like he'd just got pole position. I thought, bit much, it must be said. But again, you know, it's small wins, isn't it? And in the race itself, he was doing okay, wasn't he? As mentioned, he was ahead of Ricciardo for throughout most part of it. He was doing okay. He was taking the fight to the cars that we expected him to take the fight to. And then, unfortunately, got a bag caught in his rear brake duct. Rear right again, funnily enough, the same as Verstappen's. But it wasn't a mechanical issue, it was a bag stuck. So they removed the bag, changed the wheel, but of course then it was an extra pit stop, and here he is finishing last of the runners. Esteban is getting 6 points this weekend. He was certainly a lot better than his teammate in some aspects. The qualifying was slightly better. The race performance overall was looking better as well, but was hampered by that bag caught in the wheel duct, unfortunately. So yeah, despite finishing last of the runners, he didn't have a bad race. It's just where Alpine are at the moment. And just a shame that when it rains, it certainly does pour. And I don't think points were going to be possible, but I think maybe a P12, P13 finish would have been possible for the Alpine squad had it all gone right. 6-2, Esti Besti. Then we come to the first retirement on this list, the last that occurred in the race, of course. Technically still classified, actually, but I don't certainly classify a car on its side and capsized as a finisher. It is, of course, George of the Russell. Watch out for that wall.
As a Brabham, I naturally raced for Brabham, but it had no affiliation to my family and I had to find a shit ton of sponsorship just to finish last. Bollocks.
And there we have it. It is yet another David Brabham of the week, and this time it is awarded to Georgia the Russell, of course. What can I do? What can I do? I'm actually speechless, to be honest with you. I really am. Mercedes, for fuck's sake. It's just an headache, isn't it, with them? It really is. George, I thought we'd got over this. 2 good races to start the season off with. I thought, do you know what? The car's not great, but he's getting the maximum out of it. And here we are, trying to get past Alonso. It wasn't looking likely. Second to last lap. Alonso does something slightly different to he did the lap before. Fucking hell. Shoot him. And, yeah, George Russell can't handle it. And bins it off into the wall and tips his car over. Yeah, not great at all by George, I'm afraid. And, yeah, I'm firmly laying the blame on George Russell for that. And George Russell even blames George Russell for it. In the media pen at the end there, he says, you know, he did do something a little bit different, but it's on me. I'm the car behind. And he actually took full responsibility for it. And even when it was mentioned that, oh, we're going to the stewards and it's under investigation, I'm surprised by that. That was George Russell's exact words. He was surprised that that incident that involved no contact between the cars was going to be going to the stewards, because in his mind and in what he said, it was on him. Despite Alonso maybe doing something that was a little bit naughty at the very least, it was his problem. He didn't deal with the problem well, and he crashed, tipped the car over. So yeah, it was George's issue. George has admitted to the error. Still gives him a Brabham of the week, and I just honestly cannot see why Alonso has been penalised for that at all. Mercedes, whinging bastards, they had a bad start to the season, and they certainly just wanted to hold on to their 4th in the Constructors that they got by the thinnest of margins at the moment, because had the results stayed as they were, with Alonso not dropping down, they would have been 5th in the standings. So, you know, it was crucial for them to make sure Alonso got penalised, but I wouldn't want to position in a championship that way, especially when your own drivers admitted it were his own error. But yeah, bullshit in terms of the penalty for Alonso, and I'm afraid Russell, after having a somewhat decent race, probably been getting a 6 or a 7 from me. Yeah, he's binned it, thrown it all away, and got himself a Brabham of the week. Next up, we come to Lewis Hamilton. Another retirement, of course, a double retirement for Mercedes. The first time since Austria 2018 that we've seen both cars at the wayside and not able to participate in the full race distance. Lewis Hamilton with an engine issue quite early on, actually, wasn't it? It was just after the first round of pit stops for most cars. Yeah, just immediately cut out, really. So I'm not sure if it was an actual engine failure or an engine issue. It could have been electrical, you know, it could have just cut the car off. So we'll see what happens. It would be a shame if they have to go through another engine or have a new engine. But again, you know, allocations are tight, of course. But yeah, well, remains to be seen. All early days on that. Hamilton, though, out in Q2, not great effort, and I think even judging by the pace of the car that he had before the engine conked out, and everything happened that it happened, I think maybe P8 or P9 would have been possible, but nothing more, and it's just not good enough, I'm afraid. Yep, I think that Mercedes is a heap of shit, and I don't think it's the best Mercedes they've ever done, probably the worst in this era, I would say, but George has out-qualified him, George was out-racing him. Not good, is it? Not good. So Lewis Hamilton's getting 1 point. 1 point on the crawl room, and that is it, I'm afraid. Very close to getting a Brabham, but as mentioned, his teammate decided to take that away from him. We had the rejects further up the field as well, of course. Mainly Daniel Ricciardo was not impressed with him at all. And Alex Albon for, of course, the big shunt in free practice 1. So, yeah, escapes an of the week there, does Hamilton, and he's just awarded 1 solitary point. Yeah, it's not going well for Hamilton, is it? And will Ferrari be regretting the decision of signing him right now? Well, looking at what Sainz has done compared to what Hamilton's done, yeah, it's worlds apart, isn't it? A solitary 1 to Lewis Hamilton. And then last but by no means least, we do of course come to Max Verstappen, who had brake issues from the get-go, but they really reared their ugly head on lap 4, and by lap 5 he was in the pits with an exploded brake duct on the right rear corner, set the tyre on fire, set the wheel on fire. It was a melted mess on that right rear corner, wasn't it, unfortunately? A strange error to have where a brake locks on and jams on, it really is. Of course, you know, we saw it with Ocon with a bag in the brake duct. That can always happen, you know, that's a silly thing that shouldn't happen, but it does. And then this time around it was an actual mechanical failure, so it'll be difficult and interesting to see how Red Bull analyse this issue, because of course most of it's melted. You know, what was the failure point and how can we do it to stop it happening again. His first retirement since this time 2 years ago in Australia, 2022 of course, and since then he has won 35 races between those two retirements, so he's not had a bad run, has he? It's an unfortunate one, it's a frustrating one, but he still takes the lead of the championship going into the next round by just a few points over Charles Leclerc at this point, and then a couple more points back is Perez. And then it's Sainz, I think, isn't it? So, yeah, Sainz has really climbed his way up. So, yeah, overall, for Max Verstappen, a retirement, as you know, can only score a maximum of 5 points for any retirement. I'm going to be giving Max Verstappen 4. Giving him 4 points for that. I think, you know, the pole position lap time was good, but he made a few errors, didn't he? Damaged the floor in FP1 and, of course, missed some track time running in FP2 as well for that. So, wasn't a flawless weekend by his standards. I think had he crossed the line and won the race, I'd have probably been giving him about an 8. So yeah, you know, I think overall a 4 is fair for what he's done this weekend. Didn't get to see much of him in the race, of course, due to the failure happening so early on, but based on what we saw up until that point, he was good, but there was a little issue there, wasn't there? And the pack certainly looked to be closing around that track, so maybe this Red Bull isn't all advantageous and dominating as we saw throughout the last year. Australia looked like I think Sainz could have had a go at Verstappen even if he was a 100% car completing the race. So, yeah, 4 to Verstappen. Shame to see him out of the race, but great to see Carlos Sainz secure another victory. And fingers crossed that everything is sorted for Japan. We don't see these issues again. I would like to see a driver beat Max Verstappen on the road and on merit this season. It would be nice to see. Didn't quite happen this time around, but boy oh boy, Sainz deserved it. 4 to Max Verstappen. So there we have it then, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Australian Cruel Room. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high? Any too low? Before we go through the scores, of course, there's one driver that needs to be talked about just a little bit briefly, and that is Logan Sargeant, of course, not participating in this weekend after Friday practice due to sacrificing his car for Alex Albon's race. That means that I will be minusing 10 points from Williams for the fact that they didn't have a spare chassis when they really should have done. A modern-day Formula 1 team should not be without a spare chassis. So I lay the blame on Williams for that. They will be securing minus 10 points on their team wall when we go to that in a second. And to Sauber, Alfa Romeo, kick me up the arse, whatever. They're also getting minus 10 points for these ridiculous cross-threading wheel nuts that are costing their drivers massive amounts of time in the pits and basically making the race nil and void at the moment. They're losing that much time, they can't do anything, even though the car's a bit shit anyway. It's making their race a hell of a lot shitter. So yes, minus 10 points to Sauber, minus 10 points to Williams. And Logan Sargeant, unfortunately, didn't participate in the race, so I can't score him anything, but I do feel really sorry for him that this situation has happened. Hope to see him back stronger in Japan. Let's take a look at the current Cruel Room standings then. They're on the screen now for you. We're updated with what I have just awarded each driver. Have a look and see where your favourite driver is, and yeah... Were you expecting that from me? Do you think I was overly harsh with some drivers? Was I not harsh enough with others? There was a lot of great drives this race, and there was a lot of bad drives as well. It was very mixed grid, wasn't it? But we saw who the rejects were. We saw who the drivers were that really delivered today. And yeah, some put in fantastic results, others didn't. And yeah, I think they've all been fairly awarded. And as always, let me know down below what you thought. And the team room as well, of course. The Team Cruel Room is on the screen now for you to take a look at as well. See where your favourite team is. And do you agree with the minus 10 I have given Williams and the minus 10 awarded to kick me up the arse Sauber? It's surprising to see Alpine that far up at the moment. Maybe that will change as the season progresses. And McLaren at top of the standings at the moment with a magnificent drive by, of course, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri this weekend out. And overall a solid performance throughout most of the season so far. So yeah, there is your team room standings as well. And as always, comment below where you think the teams should be. A massive thanks as always goes out to Dan of Dan Bartlett, of course, on his YouTube channel, formerly Mushy Gaming, of course, for providing me with the intro, the scoreboards, and the driver icons that you see in the corner of your screen as I talk about them. And who can forget Dave, of course, F1 Games PlayStation, for providing me with the of the weeks that you all know and love. I'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time for the Japanese Grand Prix. I'm looking forward to that one. Suzuka, never seen it this early in the calendar before, so that will be interesting. And of course, if you like Formula E, I'll see you as well for the Tokyo E-Prix as well in between. So yes, thanks all for watching, guys, and as always, much love.